I just got back from watching The Backrooms, and I'm not gonna lie, it is actually a pretty good and decent movie. A lot of people were worried that this Backrooms movie was not gonna be up to the lore standard, or it's gonna have something that's really bad that's not gonna be correlated to the lore, but I think they actually did a really good job. I'm first gonna do a non-spoiler review, and then we will move on to spoiler reviews. Before I do any of the review stuff, I did want to go over a problem that some people had that shouldn't be a problem in the first place. The number one problem that some diehard Backroom fans had was that there was going to be an entity in the movie. A lot of people were complaining that, saying that the Backrooms should not have any monsters in it. The whole premise and the whole gimmick about the Backrooms is just the location itself. And I just think that's a stupid problem that they have. Obviously, there needed to be a monster or some type of entity or some type of antagonist. Usually good movies need an antagonist. We can't just be seeing the main character walk around for an hour and a half and nothing happens to him. That is the number one problem I wanted to address. A lot of diehard fans really didn't want an entity, but I think that's a stupid reason. We needed a monster, at least one. Anyways, let's go on to the review. I think this movie was actually really solid. This is a movie that every Backroom fan should enjoy, and some people that don't even know the Backrooms lore at all can come into this movie and understand everything that's going on. The positives for this movie is that they did the Backrooms location right. The atmosphere, the scale, the environment, the sound effects, everything about the Backrooms fit perfectly into this movie. You're right at the edge of your seat. You feel that suspense while you see the main characters walk around this location, having no idea what's going to happen to them. The entire mystery aspect of the Backrooms keeps you engaged throughout the movie. Another positive that they did for this movie is that they used the found footage camera work. The best parts about the movie was the found footage scenes. It really gives that original feel to the Backrooms, and it doesn't get out of character. If you're a cinephile and you really enjoy camera work, I feel like the best scenes are definitely going to be the found footage scenes for you. There's some scenes where you can actually feel the characters' fear or confusion while they're walking around these Backrooms. So a positive that I had for this movie was the overall message that the Backrooms movie had. I didn't really have any major knowledge from the Backrooms besides a few video games on Steam, but the film trying to explain that the Backrooms is more of a memory kind of blew my mind. I really like that message. If you're trying to draw a dog from memory, you're probably gonna miss a few parts here and there. I really like that part of the film. Those are the best parts about the movies. Now let's move on to the negatives. The number one negative for this movie is the character's motivation to go into the Backrooms. It was kind of confusing and weird. I'm not gonna get into it until I go into the spoiler section, but it just didn't feel right to me or justified for them to go into the Backrooms. I'm pretty sure a normal human would not go back into a location after they escaped while they were hearing noises or getting chased. I think that's probably the most confusing and the most let down part about the movie. The characters just don't feel strong. I don't really care about the characters while I was watching the movie. And another negative that I have for this film is the entity itself. Now, I really do think the entity itself was very goofy or not that scary at all. I'm pretty sure other people will have different opinions than mine, but I just think it was just ugly and not creepy or scary whatsoever. I just think it just comes down to personal preference. I just think it was very underwhelming. But overall, those are the negatives that I have for this movie, and I don't have that many. I think the positives for this movie really outweighs the negatives because I don't really care for the characters, and the entity I think I can scrape by. Now let's talk about that dramatic ending that this movie had. The ending jump cut to Mary in the Backrooms was extremely powerful. That was the number one question I had entering into this movie is, how are they gonna end it? As soon as I walked out of that theater, I really thought that Mary actually died. I thought the entire situation where she was in that facility or hospital was just all in her head, or it was just an imagination, and she was just stuck in the Backrooms. While some other people, like my girlfriend, really thought that it's just another copy or a duplicate of her now in the Backrooms. And I really never thought about the Backrooms like that. I thought it was just a random location with endless hallways and endless rooms, but now it kind of all makes sense to me. I'm just gonna rip the band-aid straight off. I really think the main character, Clark, was absolutely disappointing. His overall motivation to get into the Backrooms just didn't make any sense to me, and it actually kind of pissed me off while watching the movie. At first, he no-clips through the Backrooms and he eventually explores. When he's exploring the Backrooms in the first act, he eventually finds a bag, a bunch of belongings from a person, and he shows off the ID. He looks at the ID, but he doesn't look at the rest of the bag. And I'm pretty sure there was a lot of VHS tapes or any other type of information or notes about the backrooms, but he doesn't look at it, and he continues. He never collects the bag later on to look at it in the real world. He just leaves it there. He eventually explores further and he hears footsteps. Obviously, he calls out again and he hears like a scream or a roar, and the bag gets thrown across the room. He runs back to the area where he no-clipped, and he's literally looking for the entrance. He's literally scraping his fingers around the wall, being nervous and scared. And then he finally goes back into the real world and he tells his therapist about everything. His therapist doesn't believe him, so he goes back again to prove he's not wrong. That's where it kind of lost me there. The motivation that he had was just to prove his therapist that he was right. Obviously, everybody knows that the main character himself, Clark, has something wrong with him. He has a lot of therapy sessions he's going to. Something mentally is wrong with him. He could have just shown his therapist him no-clipping through the wall. I think that would have proved everything. He didn't need to go deeper in. That's the one thing that got to me. His motivation was very stupid. And again, the characters themselves were poorly written in this story. Let's move on to the entity now, and the entity itself is actually Clark in a pirate costume. Now, I understand why they did this. The whole point of the backrooms in this movie is that the backrooms itself is like a memory. Obviously, I didn't want the basic entity with the wires or the normal entity that everybody knows, but I just kind of wanted something that's a little bit more scary. And that's pretty much all I have to talk about in this review. I think I talked about the main points of the movie, and I think it was overall satisfying. I think the movie was actually good. And some people online saying that Obsession is better than the backrooms. Why are we comparing the two? They're completely two different movies. I don't understand why we're comparing them. My overall score of the movie is either a 6 or 7 out of 10. And if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing. We're currently at a 50 sub goal. We're currently at 19, so we're trying to hit that as soon as we can. And if you haven't watched my previous video, it's about The Boys Season 5 finale. Go ahead and give it a watch. Other than that, I'll catch you guys in the next one.